right here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line, Desmond Howard. How you doing, Des?
Rich, I tell you what, I'm doing fantastic, my friend, and thanks for having me, man. I've been looking forward to speaking with you all week, so this is a great pleasure for me.
That is music to my ears. Right back at you. So what do you think of the College Football Playoff Committee's decision last night, 1 through 6? What do you think?
Well, I don't think there were, many surprises. You know, everyone wanted to see where the Buckeyes would fall after, they got soundly beaten by Michigan Saturday afternoon in Columbus. So everyone wanted to see where would they fall. And, they put them at 5, and so there's an outside chance that they can get in. But if everyone holds serve this weekend, then there's no chance that Ohio State gets into the top 4. As a matter of fact, what's really interesting is if they don't get into the top 4, would the Rose Bowl pick them again for their game, or would they pick Penn State, who's in the top 10 too?
Huh. Well, I mean, one would think if the results stay come in on this weekend, Friday night in Vegas, and then TCU versus Kansas State on Saturday, if USC and TCU win, that right. would mean Ohio State and Utah would be once again ready to be matched up in the Rose Bowl. That would, that was last year, and it was a highly entertaining game. But I don't know if that would be something that people would want to see in the Rose Bowl. But we're talking college football semifinal here. The question is, I would have for you, if TCU does in fact slip up to Kansas State, do you think it would be a viable option and something that the College Football Playoff Committee would do? Take a team in Ohio State that would be sitting on its couch off a 22-point beatdown loss at home and supplant a team that performed so well in the regular season it earned the right to play for its conference championship. What do you think?
I tell you what, Rich, I'm going to take you back. For about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I've been asking on our show, College GameDay, and I've asked on other shows too, and I brought it up in the meeting. I said, because the whole conversation was, if Michigan loses to Ohio State in a couple of weeks, in 3 weeks or whatever, the end of the season, then Michigan's going to be out because they don't like Michigan's non-conference schedule. I'm like, okay, we all get that. We're fine with that. Whatever. But how about the other side, the reverse? If Ohio State loses this game, is this an elimination game for both teams? And no one ever wanted to answer that question. And then Reese Davis, a week ago, presented that same scenario to Boo Corrigan, the selection committee chairperson, and he avoided it. So it just seems like there's this hesitancy to say that Ohio State's out. Like, if there's a backdoor way for them to get in, it seems like they will try to get them in. And that's just the feeling I get because no one ever wanted to address the flip side of the Michigan-Ohio State game. They're all fine with Michigan losing because, hey, they had such a weak non-conference schedule. There's no way they're going to get in. Okay, we get that. But how about if Ohio State loses at home? We're talking now, let's put it in context, Rich. Their Heisman front-runner running back was gone. Blake didn't play. Their other running back played with one hand. The edge rusher, Mike Morris, he was banged up, maybe gave them 10 snaps. The tight end, he was banged up. I mean, if you listen to Pete Thamel before the game, it was like a CVS receipt length of injuries for Michigan. And the flip side was, hey, it's sunny, it's 50 degrees, there's no wind, it's perfect weather for C.J. Strong in this passing game. I'm hearing this is the game. Everyone's talking about Jim Knowles, the new defensive coordinator from Oklahoma State. This is the game that he was brought here for. This defense is so much different than they were a year ago. They're going to show you that. It was like so everything seemed like it was in Ohio State's favor to go out on that field and smash Michigan. And the reverse happened. So if you're in that committee, it's college football selection committee room, and you're trying to weigh everything out, it's hard not to look at those other factors too when you're splitting hairs about who's going to be in that fourth spot.
So the manner in which Ohio State lost, you think, is a significant subtractor, and even if Kansas State knocks off TCU, TCU should still be in, is what you're saying.
If it's a close game, if it's a close competitive game, I do believe that TCU should be in. Now, what will the selection committee do? I'm of the belief that they may try to get Ohio State in just because of the fact that they were never, ever willing to say that the Michigan-Ohio State game was an elimination game for both teams. And then, we know the factors involved, everything that was going into it, and they still end up, losing by 20-plus points on their own field.
I wonder, Desmond Howard, if you want to take a bite at this one, I'll give it to you. It's what we call a spinning curve in the zone. Why do you think everyone was so ready to bury Michigan, and you think everybody is looking for an excuse to resuscitate Ohio State? What do you make of that, Desmond? Why?
That's a really good question, and I really can't. I mean, it's hard for me to place my finger on it. I think that some people, they're turned off, or they've been turned off by the behavior of Jim Harbaugh at times. I think, so when you don't like a coach, then you don't like his team. I mean, outside of that, we got like a great group of guys when you just listen to them in post-game interviews, the way they conduct themselves, the way they handle themselves, the way they attack, their opponents on the field. It's like you have nothing negative to say about those guys. So, really, outside of that, I don't know. What's your theory? What's your philosophy on this? Because I have no idea why people are so willing to, attack Michigan, but they're unwilling to criticize Ohio State.
Well, before you came on, I said that if Michigan had lost the game by 22, there wouldn't even be a backdoor available for Michigan. They might have even put Alabama above Michigan. My colleague, Chris Brockman, across the way, called that unfair, right? You said that was an unfair supposition, Chris?
Rich, everything you say with Michigan and Ohio State is just like it's slanted. So just be objective. That's all
I am being objective about it. I 1,000,000% am being objective about it. As I said going in, I said if it was a close game, I think that both teams should have been in. That's what I said. Yep. I said that going into the game. And, I would have said the same thing coming out of it. Now that I'm bringing this up, though, you asked me the question. I just think that again, when Ohio State played Notre Dame, because Notre Dame, I guess, felt it was okay to play Ohio State when Michigan asked to. That schedule got bounced. They took Michigan off their schedule. But long story short, that yes, the non-conference schedule was weak. But I also think the way that Michigan had played football all year long, it was centered around Blake Corum. Nobody saw coming that J.J. McCarthy could pull off what he did against Ohio State. And I think that they thought that Ohio State was a much more versatile team, and that last year was a one-off. That's the other one, too. I thought a lot of people thought last year was a one-off. But I guess, placing all this aside for the moment, are we just rearranging chairs and it's Georgia's world anyway? What do you think, Desmond?
Well, I tell you what, I do agree with you that I think that people believe that last year was a one-off. They just had the great edge rushers and Jabo and Hutchinson, and of course they had that Swiss Army knife and Dax Hill, but they lost all that now, and the coordinator, he's gone. There's no way they're going to be able to repeat that. And now you're talking about them going to the shoe? Oh, hell no. There's no way they're going to be able to repeat it. So they thought it was a one-off. Now I think they're believers, though. Now I think they believe in the culture that Jim Harbaugh, his assistant coaches, and don't forget, he's on a new set of coordinators because he lost his offensive coordinator and his defensive coordinator from a year ago. And so, but it's the culture there. So now people are starting to say, wow, we get it. Georgia's strong, man. Georgia's a team, Rich, that, when they decide to, get serious and turn it on, they are very, very talented. And so we've seen them play down to their opponents' talent level, and we've seen them rise to the occasion of big games. I was at the Tennessee game, and the score is really no indication of the beatdown that they were really issuing to the Volunteers that afternoon in between the hedges. So very talented. They can rise to the occasion like no other. Really curious to see what happens in this LSU SEC championship game, because LSU, they come in there now limping, embarrassed. They just dropped a game they should have won to Texas A&M, which is a really, really, team that struggled this season. So I want to know what their mentality is going to be like, and I think it's going to be a better game than people anticipate. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, if LSU had not tripped up to Texas A&M, it's possible. I mean, the College Football Playoff Committee could have had LSU sitting there at 5 with the right to play in the SEC championship game. That could have been feasible. They might have even popped them in above USC to basically say, if you win, you're in too. That would have been interesting, but unfortunately for LSU and Brian Kelly, that did not happen. I've got Desmond Howard here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who's your Heisman vote going to right now, Des?
To me, it's really still open. I need to see these games this weekend, these championship games, and it's because of the injuries. It's almost like, I don't want to say it's Heisman by default, but you're starting to look for other candidates, because on the ballot you have a first place, second place, and third place. Mm-hmm. And, even if you felt as though, okay, well, now because this guy's injured, I guess I'll put this guy in the first place spot. But you still got second and third place you got to fill too, which almost becomes by default. So it's a very interesting, probably one of the more uneventful Heisman races this season, because our show, we have yet to talk about the Heisman race, which is crazy. We're about to do our last show on Saturday, and we have yet to talk about it. So that lets you know just like, I guess, how uneventful it has been. Now, if Corum didn't get injured in the Illinois game, and if Hendon Hooker didn't get injured in the South Carolina game, then we're talking about a completely different race up to this point. But, I mean, those are guys who are front runners on several ballots going into those games.
So you don't think Caleb Williams is the man, is the guy? I mean, seeing what you've seen out of him, and USC clearly could make the college football playoff. I mean, that run that he just pulled off against Notre Dame, where he gained 40 yards, but he really ran 80 yards in doing it, was eye popping. Is he he's not the default guy right now? You don't think?
There are people who are putting him in the number one pole position, but I think that people just don't really respect TCU enough to look critically at Max Duggan. I think Max Duggan is having a magical season. I think that people aren't really paying much attention to him. It's almost like, like the College Football Selection Committee, right, the Playoff Selection Committee, when the initial rankings came out, I believe they had like TCU like at 7 or something like that, and they had Clemson at 4. Now, from a football judgment standpoint, there's no way in hell you would ever put Clemson over TCU this season based on how they've looked on the football field. So I say that because you give a lot of people the benefit of the doubt, and then some people, they just have to really do much more to prove it to you than others. So Caleb Williams is a guy who came into USC with a tremendous amount of hype because of what he did at Oklahoma. And now he's following Lincoln Riley to Southern California. So people are kind of familiar with the name. They're familiar with the style. Lincoln Riley has already had a couple of Heisman winners. So you don't really have to do as much to impress people. Duggan, he's starting from a different spot in people's minds. So he has to do more. Sonny Dykes and TCU, they have to do more. Like, they really had to, go out there and prove it week in and week out for them to be where they are as far as in the college football rankings at number 3, and for Max Duggan to be, I guess, considered a Heisman finalist too. But Max Duggan, when you look at what he's done, what he means to that team, and what he's taken that team, and Rich, he wasn't even the starter at the beginning of the season. Like, he has like this fascinating story. But when he didn't win the starting job, he was like, listen, I'm gonna be the best teammate and the best backup I can be. I'm not gonna sit here and bitch and moan and complain and talk about I want to go to the transfer portal. I'm gonna be that guy that's gonna help my team in the position I am, whether it's a backup or not. And then he got the nod to be the starter after the starter got injured, and the rest is history.
So if he has a good performance against Kansas State, he might get your vote. Is what you're saying for Heisman?
He's definitely one of the. He's a strong candidate for the first place vote. Absolutely.
Okay. Before I let you go, Desmond, a moment for us. I don't care. 22-point win for Michigan this past week, 25 the year before. Neither of them, however, touched the last biggest victory that Michigan's had over Ohio State, a 28-point margin of victory in your famous Heisman pose game back in 1991. How much crap do you get when you're setting that? What was Saturday like for you before and throughout? Walk me through your Saturday being in Columbus, Ohio, Desmond.
Well, Rich, it's a very strange energy when I'm there, and I just try to, because it's like no other place where I go, and I just try to.
Well, you're from Ohio. You were from Ohio, Desmond. You're from Ohio. That's correct, right, Desmond?
Born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio.
There you go.
I didn't leave the main streets of Cleveland, Ohio, until I went to Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Okay.
And I'm a Ohio native, and I just tell you what, I started the morning by popping up on the game day desk and staring down the crowd as the boos rained down upon me. That's how I started my Saturday morning. And that was me just embracing and just using all of that negativity and channeling my my Wolverine ancestors to help me through these 3 hours I'm about to have to go through with these people just, booing every time they see me on the screen and every time I open my mouth. And I was able to power through it, so to speak, with the help of the Wolverine faithful. So that pretty much sums up the television part. And then the rest, I was on the sideline with your guy. I saw you had Bruce Feldman on the show too, and I was on the sideline talking to Bruce, and we pretty much saw the same thing. And one more thing, at halftime, I spoke to David Pollack on the bus, and I said, David, as a Michigan alum, I'm really comfortable with us being down 3 points, or Michigan being down 3 points, knowing that they just to me, they had just taken Ohio State's best shot in that first half. Because to me, Ohio State clearly outplayed Michigan in the first half, and they were only up by 3 points. I said, so going in the second half, our guys, the coaches at Michigan, they make really good adjustments at halftime. I said, so as a Michigan alum, down 3 points in the shoe, based on what I've seen so far in the first half, I'm comfortable with this.
Well, we would have signed for it prior to the game, or certainly after Jim made the decision to kick the ball to them first, put Michigan's defense on first, and then Ohio State knife through hot butter their way right down the field. Until Cornelius Johnson made that catch and run on a third down, by the way, that a catch that existed because JJ made a great throw with a rush right in his face, and the game turned right then and there. Marvin Harrison Jr. is amazing, right? He is as good as they come from what you've seen. And other than that catch, he was pretty much removed from the game. And now fans kind of want Ryan Day removed. Didn't you sort of say that on game day prior to the game? That if that happened, and did Kirk give you a little bit of grief for that, Des?
Well, hey, I 100% predicted that on game day. I don't know if it's running on any loops around here, but that's exactly what I said. And I said, we and everyone else need to understand that Ryan Day has been talking about the revenge factor, and they were scarred last year, and all of this stuff. And I said, well, I would be hesitant to, I would say, for lack of a better phrase, put all the eggs in this one basket, because you've had a great season. And once you start to sell to your fans, to your alumni, to your team that this is everything. And if you happen to stumble, then everybody's going to look at you like your season was a complete failure. And I said, if he loses a second time in a row to Michigan, I said they're going to want to get Urban Meyer off of that Fox set and have him coach.
That's exactly what happened.
What I said.
And that's exactly what happened. However, now the College Football Playoff Committee has spoken. These two teams could face each other again. I mean, that's entirely feasible right now, Des.
Yeah, it's an option. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. I think that the likelihood of them being put in a position where they would face Michigan first I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll go to 4.
They'd have to play in.
You got Georgia at 1.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and then they will have to tussle with Georgia, which would be interesting.
It would be interesting. Desmond, always interesting chatting with you. You're the best. Take care of yourself and your family, and let's chat down the road and certainly maybe potentially see each other in Los Angeles. Who knows? Right?
Rich, it's always an honor and a pleasure doing your show, and go Blue.
Attaboy. Go Blue. Right back at you. Desmond Howard, everybody. Right here on The Rich Eisen Show from the worldwide leader in sports. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.